to get the wing. Back on the 2, Walden on the 3. Oh.
Okay guys, Quentin here, Cycle for Life. Today's video, every motorcycle and bicycle guy needs a hauler to get his bikes to and from the track and to and from work and training and all that. I have chosen a 1990 G20 van, honestly just because it's cheap. You know, I went through a divorce, lost a business. Most of you guys that know me know about all that, but you know, I didn't want to go out and finance some $40,000 truck. I didn't want to do it. So I paid cash for this whole thing. And I've been running it a few years now. I put a used transmission in it once myself. I put a crate engine in it. I bought the crate engine brand new. I did that myself. So now that I've put a new engine and a used trans in it, so now I'm having a fuel pump problem, which I had originally when I got it about 2 years ago, and I bought a cheap aftermarket fuel pump and put in it. So I thought, okay, do I go out and get a Ford Transit or a Dodge ProMaster and start making payments, or do I just throw a fuel pump in this one knowing I have a good powertrain? Yeah, it doesn't get good gas mileage and all that, but you know, anybody with a brain and a calculator can figure out that $30,000 buys a heck of a lot of gas. And I live pretty close to where I work now in Georgia, so I'm not consuming a lot of gas, so mileage isn't as important to me as it once was. So I've opted to go ahead and put a fuel pump in it. So today's video is putting a fuel pump in the G20 van. What does that have to do for motorcycle racing and bicycle training? Not much, but anybody that's interested in how to put a fuel pump in a van, this is how you do it. Alright, step 1, crawl under the back and get a visual on how to get the tank out. These nuts and bolts are rusty on the outside, but they shouldn't be locked up because I had them off a couple years ago doing the same job. So I got a few various sockets to fit my my hardware here. We're going to get this hitch out of the way, and then we're going to drop the straps, get the pump on the ground. Then we'll disconnect it and drag it out. So step 1, hitch removal. Guys, so these 2 bolts here, I don't know if the camera's getting it. These 2 bolts here that bolt right to the frame go up into a couple of blind nuts that you can see better on this side. They're tack welded up inside the frame. Well, they're so old and so rusted that when I broke these bolts loose to get them out right here, those nuts broke free in the frame and they're just spinning. So I got the bolts worked loose enough I could get the hitch down out of the way enough to get the tank out. So I've got the room that I need to get the tank out and change the pump. But later, before I hook a trailer back up to this van, I'm going to have to go back up here and weld that into the frame. I'm just going to have to grind the paint off the hitch and the frame and weld it, because those bolts are so loose and rusted I can't trust them anymore, and I can't get them out at home with the tools I have. I could drill them out, and then once I drill them out, great, the hitch will fall off, or grind the heads off, great. But I have no way to dig into the frame and replace those tack welded nuts. They were tack welded before the rest of the van was assembled, and now that the bumper plates and all the other brackets are welded on that frame, I can't get up in there anymore. So I could cut a whole plate out and do 2 nuts on the back of a plate and weld the plate in and do all that, or I could just weld the bumper hitch to the frame. I think that's the route I'm going to take. So yes, it means, here's what that means. It means if I have a fuel pump failure on the side of the road somewhere someday, I won't be able to fix it on the side of the road without grinding the hitch off. Yeah, it's inconvenient, but given the age of this vehicle and what it's worth and how much money I'm going to put into something I'm only going to drive another couple years maybe, I'm just going to go with it. And the next time the fuel pump fails in another 50, 70, 80,000 miles, 100,000 miles, whatever, I'll probably just throw the van away at that point. So, alright guys, I just wanted to show you that that's sometimes what you run into on these old projects like this. So thankfully I did get it cracked loose enough before the nuts broke that I could at least wiggle it around, and that's a blessing because I can at least get the tank out. I took that line fitting off. It's a bolt that holds that little guide. See that little guide I loosened up off the frame? When I get that second strap off this tank, it's going to swivel down and it's going to come crashing down on the ground, because unfortunately it does have some fuel in it. I couldn't get it all 100% out. So when that comes down, I didn't want the weight of all that ripping these lines apart, so I loosened that fitting, and I'll put that back on last after everything else is done. It's just there to protect the lines and the rubber from moving around and rubbing and vibrating and getting all cut up and rubbed through. But I'm afraid if I left it there and this tank came down, it would pull something. So just think things through. You know if you're going to drop a tank, the fittings and all the hoses and all the wires and all the stuff that go to that tank are going to come down with it. So you don't want to be pulling wires, damaging connectors, hoses. You get it. Tank down, and I'm gonna do the fill line next. I'm gonna do the fill hose. If I remember correctly, that's just this, I don't remember which end I took off last time, but hopefully I'm getting the same end, because sometimes those hoses, man, they can really gall onto some metal. And they've been on there for years like this, all rusted up. Especially more so in the automotive stuff than the motorcycle stuff because of the road salt. Oh, look at that. That's coming off real easy. Watch this, guys. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. See how that wire and those hoses have room to live without getting all pulled apart? See this, guys? See how I got some slack in that wire and these hoses? That's a good thing. You don't want all that pulling super tight when you're trying to get this out. All right, I gotta figure out how to unconnect that electrical fitting and get these clip-de-doos off of here. That looks like a vent. That was pretty easy. And then these two main lines, of course, we'll have to get some line wrenches out for that. But my main concern is how to get that electrical connection off. All right, here we go. The new pump, guys. The wire doesn't come off of the pump. It's got a pigtail that runs up along the frame and comes up somewhere else on the truck. So that's nice. That's nice. That'll make getting the electrical connections off and on safely without pulling any connectors or damaging anything much easier. Okay, tank's out from under the truck. You guys know how to move these rings. These rings just turn like that and you tap them. You spin them out of the way and then the pump lifts up. And it comes out like that. Now pay attention to the orientation of the tank and where your fittings go. You don't want to put it in, go in the wrong direction. So, yeah, that's how you get the old one out. Now I'm going to look down in that tank and I'm going to make sure I got a good clean inside of the tank. I don't have any debris or, you know, I don't know how leaves could get down in there or whatever, but this tank's been on this truck for 30 years, I guess. And when I put the last pump in, I changed this part, just this part. I just changed the pump on the sending assembly. I didn't get the whole assembly. But this time, I spent a little more money and got the whole schmageg. Got the whole thing. I got this set up with a new float, new senders, new pipes, new fittings, everything. New O-ring, all of it. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and flush that tank out real good, make sure there's no debris in it, nothing to cause me any trouble. I don't see any problems with the sock or the pickup. Doesn't look like it was having problems getting clean fuel. But, alright, I'm going to flush this tank out and put the new pump in. Putting a fuel pump in a van have to do with cycling and motorcycling? Nothing. I just need hits on YouTube to grow my channel. Subscribe, please. It would help me grow this thing. Whenever you're doing work like this on cars, motorcycles, anything, you want to make sure your new parts are correct. See how I'm checking the fitting sizes on all these? The layout, the wires come out in the same place in the same way. The vent tube nipple looks like it's the same size. So it's obvious we got the right pump. But you want to check that before you just throw it in, because even if it fits the hole, it doesn't mean all the hoses and fittings and everything are correct. And then once you put gasoline all over it and it stinks like fuel, the parts company won't want to take it back. So make sure you check your parts out before you actually try to install them. When you guide these back in, you want to angle the float down first. You know, you put this part down in the hole first, like that, and then kind of angle it and walk it down in. I mean, let common sense prevail there. If you can't figure that out, you don't need to be watching this. But there's an O-ring in there, guys. Make sure that O-ring is seated. It's got to be in its groove. They did not do a very good job of spending a lot of money machining high quality parts there. These are stamped junk parts, and it's real easy for that O-ring to fall out of its groove. So make sure the O-ring stays in there and you get a good seal. You don't want a lot of rain splash and salt splash getting in your tank. I know it's vented anyway, but you want to just try to keep everything clean. Alright, and I hate to use the old cliche, but in this case it's true. Reversal's just kind of, installation is the reverse of these steps. I mean, I know that's what all the tech books say, but yeah, you just slide this back in. You kind of line this up, get that close to where it's got to be, do your hoses, do your wiring, and then put the tank on top of the straps. Now the bugaboo of this deal, the real challenge of this deal is lifting the tank up while you're setting the first strap. And that's a challenge. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to film that because I only have two hands. But getting the tank lifted up into place, you got to hold it with your human strength long enough to set the first strap. And it really is a blessing to have a helper to help you do that. But if you're by yourself, you'll struggle through it. You'll get it done like me. You make it happen. Alright guys, God bless. I'm going to put this back in the reverse order I took it out. Tack weld my receiver hitch back on the left side after I get the right side bolts in. And we'll be ready to test drive this mama in about 45 minutes. So I'm using these wooden blocks to walk it up. I walked this side up, connected the hose for the fill, and then I walked this side up to try to gain a little height. Now I'm going to see if I can set the first strap. See that? I got 2 blocks of wood onto that side. I got the fuel fitting hose holding it on this side. And between the fuel hose and those 2 blocks, I was able to lift this empty tank that I had flushed out up high enough to get these straps on. Once you can get one side of the strap started, then you can walk it in the rest of the way with a wrench. I wanted to make sure she was running before I torqued the straps up and did the final installation. I hooked up the pump enough to make it run, and she's running good, so I'm going to go ahead and torque these straps up and finish this job. But that's how you put a pump in a Chevy van. Pain in the you-know-what. Whole thing took me, because I had all the parts here ready to go and I didn't have to run out and buy anything and I was fully prepared, took me an hour and maybe 15-20 minutes, hour and a half maybe. So alright guys,